Good evening and welcome to our Planning and Housing Commission meeting. I'd like to make notice that we're down to 3 commissioners. Last meeting we said goodbye and thank you to Commissioner Tim Jones and Dave Hooks for their service. We appreciated their time here on the commission. We do have a quorum, so we'll continue with the meeting. So I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. For record-keeping purposes, if you wish to make a statement regarding any item on the agenda, please complete a form located at the entrance or to the rear of the council chambers and deposit it with the Planning and Housing Commission Secretary. If you'll please stand, Commissioner Sicklin will lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Craig. Communications from the public. Persons wishing to address the Planning and Housing Commission are requested to state their name for the record. This portion of the agenda is intended for public comment. State law prohibits the Planning and Housing Commission from discussing or taking action on items that are not listed on the agenda. The Planning and Housing Commission appreciate your cooperation in keeping your comments brief. Ms. Sanchez, did we receive any correspondence?
We did not, Madam Chair.
Thank you. On the agenda is the election of the chair. I'm going to go ahead and open this up to our dais and have a discussion. Mr. Sicklin.
Yeah, I think in light of the fact that we have only 3 members and there's 2 new members that will be forthcoming, I'd like to propose that we hold the re-election or the election of a new chair and vice chair until we have a full 5-member commission.
Ms. Meza?
I agree with that.
Okay, I also agree with it. So what happens from here is that just as a side note, it was brought up that the council member elects, the 2 of them, will be sworn in December 16th. And Ms. Coletta, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. The city clerk announced at the orientation today that the applications will be opened up for Wednesday, December 9th through the 29th for any resident who wishes to put in an application to be a commissioner for consideration by the 2 elected council members. That'll be open for 3 weeks. It'll be provided, that list will be provided to those council members whom they will choose somebody, and then that'll be brought forth to the full council for appointment. So we expect to have a full commission come February, and at that time, we'll have it on the agenda at that time. So I'll go ahead and, we need a motion, right, Joanne?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Okay, I'll motion that we hold those elections until we have a full 5-member commission.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Yes, I second that
Ms.
motion.
Meza seconds it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and vote.
We'll have to do this
All right.
manually.
It's
So the record will reflect Chair Sicklin motioned and second by Commissioner Mesa. And everyone agrees, so the motion passes with the vote of 3-0.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right, well, we'll go ahead. We have no consent items, so we'll go to the public hearings. Public hearings are items. Thank you. I am just zooming through this. I passed up our meeting minutes. So the minutes that are posted are from November 9th meeting, 2020. And did we have any speaker cards, Ms. Sanchez, on the minutes?
We did not.
All righty, so we'll go ahead and I'll accept a motion for approval.
I motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Meza. Mr. Sicklin.
I have a second.
Thank you, and we'll go ahead and vote. All right, that passes 3-0. Thank you. All right, now we don't have any consent items and the public hearing. Public hearing are items that have been publicly advertised for review and consideration by the Planning and Housing Commission. The first public hearing item is for Development Agreement 15-001, amended and restarted First Amendment to the Arantine Hills Development Agreement, originally adopted on January 2nd, 2019. Applicant, Arantine Hills Holding, LP. Ms. Coletta.
you indicated, this is an amended and restated request for the Arantine Hills Development Agreement. Before I go into the actual request this evening, I just want to give a little bit of history, which is always good when we're dealing with the existing projects, so you have an understanding of how we got here today. Back in 2016, the city did enter into a development agreement with Arantine Holdings, and that was for the property that was located within the Arantine Hills specific plan. That plan covers 276 acres at the time in 2016. It also allocated 1,621 housing units, but it also made accommodations for an additional 185 age-restricted units. That development agreement talked about certain infrastructure improvements that would be phased in over time during the course of construction of the project. It also explained development impact fee credits that would be given to the developer because of the construction of certain infrastructure improvements that would fall within those categories. So in 2019, the developer did come before us, and they asked to do a first amendment to the agreement. The reason for the amendment at that time is that they were going to annex in 31 acres into the specific plan. So in 2019, the request was to add a total of 31 acres, bringing the total specific plan area to 307 acres. However, the housing unit count did not change. It remained at the status quo. So we did not see an increase of units with the addition of that 31 acres. It simply reshifted some of those units across the entire specific plan area. All of the initial terms of the development agreement remained in place. However, there were some amendments at that time that we took into consideration that did get adopted in 2019. So I'm just going to quickly go over what those changes were back in 2019. The First Amendment implemented an age restriction requirement for the age-restricted housing. So that is a minimum requirement of 62 years old for one of the occupants living in the home. At the time, we asked for a cash payment for one of the traffic signals at Masters and California Drive. The developer was responsible for 64% of the construction cost. We switched that to a bond. And the reason for that is at the time, we did not know if the signal would be needed. So by allowing us to do the bond, it allows us to capture more of the actual cost under the cash when we actually decide to construct that signal. So let's just say the signal doesn't get constructed 5 years from now. If we collected cash 5 years earlier, it's likely that the cost of that signal has changed. So at that time, we went ahead and adopted a bond instead of collecting cash, and that bond has since been posted to date. We also needed to update the acreage for the park sites within the Arantine Hills specific plan, and it also added new park acreage in planning area 18. And then it also put in there a timeline for the annexed property. And what the amendment said is that this amendment would terminate if the developer does not acquire the annexed property or otherwise have an equitable interest in the annexed property by December 31st of 2020. And this is an agreement that the developer has with the landowner itself. And this was a timeline that they had actually put into the development agreement. So I'm here to tell you, based on our conversations with the developer, they are not going to be able to meet that deadline of December 31st of 2020. They are not going to have fee title to the property, and they're not going to have an equitable interest by that time. So they're coming before us tonight with the new request in order to have changed that deadline. So when you see in your staff report and as part of the amended agreement, we no longer have a set date in there. It no longer says by this date they have to do that. What it simply says is that this agreement will automatically terminate if the developer's option to acquire that annexed property from the landowner expires, or if anything happens prior to that in which that would terminate. So that means it's really up to those two parties to decide how the acquisition is going to go. Also, the original development agreement does have a term limit. It is for 10 years, but there are 2 5-year extensions if they meet certain deadlines. And based on this way this property is being constructed, they have already exceeded some of their set standards. So overall, this development agreement already has a 20-year time limit to begin with. The other amendments associated with the First Amendment are not being changed, as I just went over with you, and they're simply asking that those provisions simply be restated in this agreement. However, what the developer has done in the meantime in order to prevent a lapse in those other accommodations, we did sign an operating memorandum with them on December 1st of 2020, and we are allowed to do that under the existing agreement. If there is non-substantive changes to the project, we can do an operating memorandum. So with respect to the age restriction, the bonding of the units, or the bonding of the traffic signal, those were things that we were able to still capture in an operating memorandum. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And that is the conclusion of my presentation, and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Secklin. Or did you want to go?
Ms. Claudia, you had mentioned that the date termination date was a language or clause that the developer asked for. Is that normal to include that typically, and what was the basis for that termination?
It is normally for us, when we're working with development agreements, it's normal to have an expiration for the entire agreement itself. So for example, on the original DA, to have a term of 10 years with 2 5-year extensions, that's normal because then it's universally applied across the entire agreement. This in itself was specifically intended for the annexed property, which made it a little unique. And then it really held the other amendments at hostage for it. So I can have the developers here this evening. He can explain why they thought December 31st. Maybe it was a negotiation tactic with the landowner. I don't know. But when they presented it to us, we didn't see any reason not to have it. But looking back, it was probably better to have a different verbiage in there.
I guess my mic wasn't working, so I have this. And one follow-up to that, then there's nothing else attached to that date expiring besides the ability to purchase the deed.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Quick question. Does it affect residents in any way, this change?
No, it does not. The specific plan that was adopted in 2019 already went into effect, the amendment that was approved at that time. So this land exists as it does with the current zoning on the property. So whether or not it's in the development agreement, it's already entitled for development.
Thank you for that explanation. I don't have a question on that, but I was wondering if I could, just for better understanding, taking a look at the developer agreement where it talks about the 31 acres being, that's of focus, that they're age qualified. And in the verbiage here, it talks about they may develop age qualified housing.
Yes.
But on this, on the fourth page, it talks about they shall not be developed or constructed as senior housing development. Can you explain that term?
Yeah, I believe there was some language, and I'll have to go to the California Government Code, and Jamie's, she had to do the research on this. I believe there's some language in the differentiation between senior housing and age restricted, and I'll have her talk about that. But when we had to come up with that 62 age limit, we had to make sure that that was differentiated from what the California Government Code says.
Because I'm thinking of a previous project was 55 or older, and maybe, so I'm surprised to hear 62, but I'd be curious about what that difference is.
Certainly, Joanne's correct. The issue was the civil code actually specifies a lower age, and this change actually came about at the council meeting in between the first and second reading of the ordinance approving that First Amendment. And the concern was that they get more units if they're age restricted. Correct, Joanne? Like, these are the additional units. So on top of their 1621 units in that development, if they have certain age-restricted units, they can have even more. And the concern that the council raised at that time is that the traffic that could be generated by what are termed seniors that are 55 is a little bit different. They're very, 55 is not that old, and they're very active. And
Thank
there
you.
could be, traffic and whatnot. So they wanted to have a higher limit for those units. And so that is what was negotiated with the developer. And they agreed to, despite what the civil code says, they agreed to only get those units for 62 and over.
It's just interesting to me that after 1,621 units, then it was decided they wanted the higher number for less traffic. My other question would be on when it talks about the performance bond may not be canceled during the term for any reason. That's on page 5, letter D. I was wondering about that, having to do with the traffic signals, but that's a done deal, you said already, right, Joanne?
Yes, that's already been posted and collected by Public Works.
And my other question was whether the intersection at, and this is just for better understanding for me, I couldn't quite get it, the Masters in California intersection for that traffic. So the Public Works Director would be the one to decide when that build would be based on,
Yes.
what is that
So they
based
will
on?
be looking at the level of service along Masters in its entirety. If you recall, there was a sequence of signals that were going to be constructed, and they did not want to come in and do it piecemeal. So they're looking at it from basically the whole piece of the pie, I should say, rather than at pieces. So they wanted to wait to see how this project is going to look with respect to how it's going to impact those intersections.
Okay, and as the build continues with each of the phases, then they'll have a better idea.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. And then in talking about the planning area for the private parks, and, this was approved, this came through before my time, so I just wanted to ask about the prior issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the last production residential unit for Phase 1, which is a done deal, the 1.5 million for credit toward DIF and Parkland and open space. So is that already paid since Phase 1's already done? Is that?
I believe so, and I do have an update. It's on my seat right there, but Mr. Sherwood can confirm that, but I do believe it has been posted as well.
I can actually help with that. We have also had another operating memorandum between the city and the developer, and we allowed them to split up that payment in two of $750. Again, John Sherwood will probably have to comment exactly on whether the first one's been made, but we didn't reduce the amount. We just allowed them to separate it into two payments.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So then on the 8th page where it talks about the automatic termination, depending on whether the title would be obtained or not at December 31st. So to avoid that, that's why this is coming before us here, is to give them a no time limit. Is that correct?
In terms of a set specific date, yes, but if they do not reach the deal with the landowner, it will terminate then automatically.
Okay, great. That's all my questions. Thank you. Do you want, anyone want to have the developer come up? Do we have any questions for Mr. Sherwood? No? All right, thank you, Joanne. All right, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and open it up for public hearing. Ms. Sanchez, did we have any cards?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right, public hearing. If anyone wants to come down and speak, Mr. Sherwood.
Commissioners, good evening. John Sherwood. I'm with Pacific Ventures Management. We are the manager of Arantine Hills Holdings, the owners of Bedford. And I think Joanne did a great job explaining the issue, which is really a technical timing issue for us. When we originally entered into the First Amendment to the development agreement, the option we had to purchase the additional property was set to expire in June of 2020. So we bought ourselves enough time to say, okay, we should know what we're going to do between June and December of 20, and that's how that timing was established. With COVID and some of the other delays in the project, like Joanne said, it became apparent that we weren't going to be able to close confidently by the end of this year. So that's why we're here with the extension. We want to take a little more time to evaluate that property in the context of our overall plan and have some more flexibility to make that decision. So this amendment really just only does that. It gives everyone more time on both sides as the option holder and the owner to look at the conditions of the market and make an assessment at some point about acquiring the property. Right now, the option we have goes until June of 21. So in the first part of next year, we'll be looking real closely at what we're going to do to acquire that property. There was a question about the $1.5 million payment. That comes at the final C of O for phase one. We have not reached that point yet. Phase one is a total of 393 homes. I think we've got occupancy in about 250. So we're obviously watching that time frame, and when that timing occurs, as Jamie said, we will make a payment of $750,000 to the city, and then we extended it into phase two for the other $750,000. So that's kind of how we reached agreement on the breakdown of that payment. The questions about age-qualified housing really apply to anywhere we would elect to do age-qualified housing. Anywhere that's zoned medium or high-density residential in the specific plan could be designed for age-qualified housing. So it's just, per your comment, it's not specific to the option area that we're talking about.
Oh, I thought there was something in there that said it would only apply to, sorry, the 31 acres, not to any, you wouldn't hold your feet to the fire for any of your other phases.
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you.
No, it's kind of, and in fact, we had that requirement in the 2012 version of the plan as well. So it's been with the project all that time, just to give everyone a sense of the flexibility that may occur if we decide to do senior housing. So I'm here for questions, but we support staff's recommendation, and we'd like to be able to move forward.
I can see that. I was wondering if you could give us an update on your phases, because phase two is being built?
Phase two has been approved by your group. You probably remember that in, I think it was June or so of 2020. We have not started construction yet. That hopefully is imminent.
Okay.
We're going through some final work with our general contractor and some other things on the construction side. So we fully expect phase two to start grading by the first quarter of next year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Just to clarify a comment, so the request for the extension or elimination of the date termination clause is not just to help facilitate the negotiations with Macmillan Trust, it's also to, you said, to evaluate even if that is the intended outcome. Is that correct?
So with the option to purchase, which basically was established probably 5 years ago, obviously things have changed in the market. So costs and conditions need to be evaluated in the current times. So we want to make sure we understand all the obligations that would go with acquiring that property. And we're continuing to evaluate that and come up with plans that we can evaluate financially as well. So we're still working on that with the owner.
And in light of that, you stated potentially June of 21. But could it extend beyond that now that the termination clause has been removed?
We would have to agree with the owner to extend that date. That's a closing date unless both sides agree to extend it further. But I think what staff has pointed out is we wouldn't have to come back to you again. If we tried to pick the right date again and we extended the closing or things changed, we'd have to do this all over again. So it gives us a little more flexibility with the upside of making sure that if we close, that land is in the specific plan, because I think that's what everybody wants from a continuity standpoint.
And the 31 acres, if it were to be age qualified and developed, this would be at the end of all your phases, is that correct? Or how would that fit in with your timeline?
It would be the final phase,
Okay,
yes. So we would build it after, we're in phase 2 now, so call it phase 4, basically.
okay, great, thank you. Ms. Meza, any other questions? All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and take another blue card, Mr. Sherwood, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Mr. Morgan?
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to clarify, so the diff fees are only collected when the project is finished in this case? Because usually, I mean, I just want to, that's not the norm. I was curious if that was a negotiated part of the developer agreement, because, I mean, if there's 400 homes being built and then it's not due and payable until the last one gets a C of O. So I mean, it seems like if they built 375 and left the last 25, that they're, you know, it's a very unique deal. Usually you have to pay those fees when you pull the permit. So, thank you.
That is correct. They are being paid as each permit is being issued.
Well, they have a credit.
Yep.
Did you want to speak on that, Michelle?
Yes, we are collecting the development impact fees at time of building permit issuance. The development agreement allowed for the parkland and open space fees, some credits, and the payments as outlined in the agreement.
Thank you for that clarification. All right, not seeing any other cards, and if we don't have any other questions for Mr. Sherwood, I'll go ahead and close the public meeting. Bring it back to the dais. Any other comments for staff or questions? All right, then I'll go ahead and entertain a motion, please.
I motion to approve Development Agreement 15001.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Please vote. And that passes 3-0. Thank you very much, Ms. Coletta. And Jamie, thank you for your answers. Appreciate it. All right, for the next public hearing item, it's precise plan application for the review of 9,990 square foot daycare facility proposed on 1.29 acres located at the terminus of Vesper Circle, south of East Ontario Avenue in Sub-District 4 of the Main Street South Plaza Specific Plan, SB 91-1. Applicant, Mr. Jim Brunet of H.I. Corona LLC, 20 North Raymond Avenue, Suite 300, Pasadena, 91103. Mr. Torres.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight's item is for a precise plan review of a new 9,990 square foot daycare facility development located on the terminus of Vesper Circle, south of Ontario Avenue in Sub-District 4 of the Main Street South Plaza Specific Plan. This undeveloped site is bordered by commercial development to the north, a church to the west, a flood control to the east, and Lee Pollard High School to the south. This infill site is comprised of 3 parcels, to which the applicant is processing a lot line adjustment in order to merge the 3 parcels into one. The building will be occupied by the Learning Experience, which is a children's daycare business. The proposed hours of operation are 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., Monday through Friday, and intends to have special events in the evenings and on weekends. Daycare facilities are permitted in Sub-District 4 of the Main Street South Plaza Specific Plan. The proposed daycare building and fenced playground are located on the south portion of the site. The parking lot is located on the north portion of the site, which includes a trash enclosure and a loading space. This site is not adjacent to any residential zones, therefore does not require any setbacks in accordance to the specific plan. The architectural incorporates a stucco finish, red tile roofing, decorative cornices at the tower roof lines with an arch entrance. The architecture incorporates elements of the Spanish colonial style, which is required by the South Corona Facilities Plan for commercial buildings. The building is one story, 32 feet in height, and is below the specific plan's 40-foot high limit, and will be screened by a 5-foot parapet wall for the mechanical equipment on the rooftop. The facility's main entrance is located on the north of the building. The interior has a reception area and classrooms servicing infants, toddlers, twaddlers, preschool, and pre-K children. The proposed playground is on the south side of the building, is 12,500 square feet of area, and is divided in sections for the children. The Corona Municipal Code states fencing in commercial developments is to be tubular steel or decorative block. The Learning Center is requesting to use 6-foot high vinyl fencing for the perimeters of the playground, as they consider the vinyl fencing to be softer and more forgiving when a child comes in contact with the fencing. The Corona Municipal Code is silent on the use of vinyl fencing. And since the playground is not visible from a public street, the Planning Division considers the vinyl fencing material appropriate. 6-foot high tubular steel fencing will be placed on the property line on the northwest perimeter against an existing wood and chain link fence that is owned by the church. A 4-foot tubular steel fence will be placed perpendicular on the easterly parking spaces. An existing chain link fence on the site's east perimeter shall remain for the flood control channel. The Corona Municipal Code requires parking for daycare facilities at 1 space per employee, plus 1 space per 10 children. The proposed learning center will have 21 staff members and a maximum capacity of 166 children, which results in 38 parking spaces required. The proposed daycare provides 38 parking spaces. Based on the number of parking spaces required and provided, the site does have sufficient parking for staff members and children drop-offs. The site has two 28-foot wide driveways located on Vesper Circle. The westerly driveway will be restricted for ingress, while the easterly driveway will be restricted for egress. The site also contains a 28-foot one-way drive aisle that circulates around the parking lot. The applicant is required to construct public improvements that include 2 driveway approaches, a landscape parkway, a new sidewalk, and resurface a roadway on Vesper Circle. As shown on the display, the conceptual landscape plan proposes 4 different types of tree, ranging from 24 to 36-inch boxes near the driveways, throughout the parking lot, and in front of the building. The applicant will plant shrubs, ground covering, to enhance the site, including planting in the water quality basin. All planting for the project is California-friendly as required. The Corona Municipal Code prohibits live turf in commercial zones. However, live turf live turf is permitted in the area if it's utilized for recreational purposes. As shown, live turf is within the playground area. The project proposes a 124 square foot trash enclosure. The city requires a rate of 60 square feet per 10,000 of gross commercial floor area. The enclosure will be designed with decorative block and trellis cover top. Therefore, comply with our city standard. Two monument signs are proposed for the site. One is located on site by the westerly driveway, and will advertise the name of the daycare facility. The second monument sign is proposed on the corner of Vesper Circle and Ontario Avenue, which is the location of an existing office building. The Main Street South Plaza specific plan was previously amended to allow for the shared arrangement, provided that the monument sign advertise no more than 5 tenants and include the name of the center. Both monument signs comply with the sign regulations in this specific plan and meet the city's corner cutoff regulations for vehicle and pedestrian visibility. In closing, staff has not received any correspondences or phone calls during this time. The proposed precise plan facilitates the development of a new daycare facility to meet the needs of Corona residents, and also promotes the city's goal of developing infill lots. The proposed project is consistent with the Sub-District 4 of the Main Street South Plaza specific plan and the general plan designation of commercial. Therefore, application PP 2020-0002 as recommended for your approval tonight. I am here for any questions, and I do have the applicants present for any questions you should have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rafael. I like the idea of the vinyl, little kitties running into things, always bouncing off things. Vinyl would definitely be a good idea. I had a question regarding the some of the conditions of approval. When it talks about the trash enclosure, thank you for 15, 16, and 17 under planning. I am a stickler for trash enclosures. And walking today to the businesses on the cul-de-sac, there is an element of homelessness, transiency in that area, specifically in those business centers. So the trash enclosure that's currently at the end of the north side of the cul-de-sac is is not often, but occasionally, there is subjects going through there. So with that in mind, the trash enclosure that you're identifying for the applicant, I personally like the Raising Cane as a standard. I think that's an awesome setup. It's top, bottom. I know you've addressed it in 16 and 17, so I appreciate that. If we could push for a Raising Cane standard, that would be great. Regarding the I guess I had a question regarding how does that work when you have an existing cul-de-sac and you've got two strip centers on both sides and it was built for that infrastructure? Is the water levels, the water pressures, is it anticipated that the build on the dirt lot, is that anticipated at the time? Because in it talks about 45, 46, where it talks about that being the improvements to see if it would be adequate. Has that already been done, or does that need to be improved for this applicant?
I would refer to Public Works for that question.
Hi. We did a fire flow test analysis, and we determined that there would be adequate fire flow capacity for.
Oh, as is?
Yes.
There. Great, okay. That was all I had. I'll go for now. Mr. Sicklin?
Well, I have to admit, I had to look up the term twaddlers, because I had not heard that. I guess my children are quite a bit older. Actually, I always tend to focus on traffic and safety and circulation, and I actually was impressed with the design and both the ability to house more cars than would be required at the 80% rule. Two comments came up in your presentation and then just noted. The zoning is commercial, but this is a daycare. Is that daycare facility? Is that classified? Is there a subclassification under school? Or how are daycares classified in our code? I was curious about that.
Under the specific plan, it does permit for daycare facilities specifically under the sub-district 4 specifically.
And so the comment about the wall, whether it was a steel or block, that was tied to the commercial requirement.
That is correct.
Okay. I mean, in this case, it seems like a vinyl fence is still in the spirit of what's being required and flexible enough for small children. Seems to make more sense than an open metal fence.
Yeah, on a safety matter, it does give it a more of a safety precaution
Right.
for the daycare.
Okay. I'm sorry? For twaddlers, yeah. It's kind of a tongue-tied name. And then the last question or comment is the traffic flow study included off of Ontario, is that correct? So it's not just within Vesper Circle that this applies, but they actually did the analysis on Ontario.
That is correct. And I would refer to Rosie from Public Works for further questions on the traffic.
Yes, the traffic study did include the LOS study for Ontario and Vesper.
Okay. Thank you.
So I looked up the company and it looks good, 275 locations. We have one in Riverside and Redlands, is that correct?
I believe the applicant can elaborate on that.
So I wanted to ask, are students going to be coming at a different time or is it going to be set schedules for that? Just because I was looking at traffic impact and wanted to see if that would be an issue.
Yeah, the study did indicate on the peak hours from AM and also PM at the maximum capacity. So it gave us the analysis for that. And in terms of the time ranges for the operation purposes, yeah, the applicant is here to answer questions how the operational standpoint would be.
Perfect, thank you.
I also wanted to hear from the applicant on that regard. Did you have another question for staff? Raphael, could, going back here, Public Works for the conditionals of approval, the construction operation, and I was asked by some of the businesses that I contacted there on Vesper, on Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Is that because it's construction, or is residential a different, doesn't it close down at 6, or how does that work?
On the operational hours
For construction, correct?
for construction during the week,
Right, is that a city standard, or is there a different time for construction area versus residential?
no, we have a regulation referencing the construction times, I believe, whether it's residential or commercial, from a certain point of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. On the weekdays. That does not include any holidays, which has more of a stricter hourly.
And I saw
construction.
that in there, 10 to 6. I just didn't know if that was different. Okay, thank you for that. All right, thank you, Mr. Torres, I appreciate that. Could we have the applicant come up so we can ask some questions, please? And it's Mr. Rostamian.
And Commissioners, we also have the applicant on a Zoom conference in case we need to speak to the tenant, the proposed tenant.
Oh, great.
Yeah, he should be on I believe she's there.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
Hi, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Do not need to be on the screen, that's for sure.
We'll be with you in just a second. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Rostamian.
Thank you very much. Working? Okay. My name is Hamo Rostamian. I'm a principal with HRI Development. We're both the owner and the applicant for the project. We have requested the presence of the regional manager, Karen, who would be available to answer your operational questions. We also have the site architect as well, Gabriel, available if you have any particulars about that. But beyond that, I'm just pleased to be here, and we'll certainly make sure all of your questions are answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, while you're here, so looking at the one diagram where it shows the landscaping plan, it also shows the flow for the circulation. So the driveway on the, let's see, what would that be? The west side, so that would be ingress, correct? Is the traffic directed to the outer lane, so it comes closest to the building? Or are they directed to the inner circle there? What's that flow?
We haven't really necessarily designated a separation there, but I believe the fire department also was making sure, and we want to make sure that there's at least 2 cars that can go by. I think Karen can certainly comment on this. The learning experience is a very unique operation in that they're very hands-on in the parking lot as well. So they observe and sort of manage not just the internal operation, but they also observe and manage all the flow that comes through the parking lot as well. So as Karen will explain a little bit more, you'll see it's entirely focused on observation and security all the way from the parking area to the interior and the playground.
Thank you. And regarding this landscape, now that we have it up, it's great that there's so many trees and shade areas for the asphalt. Is there any consideration for landscaping for the kiddos in the backyard, in the back play area? Is there any shading for them?
You know, the security and safety, as all of us share that concern. I believe having trees, in the play areas certainly presents additional observation, additional measures. So we typically would prefer to have no obstructions and no items that they can come to contact other than the specific playground items that have been specifically designed for safety.
I drove by a couple of other daycare centers here in town, and in the play area, with 9 months of heat, very hot, for kids being outdoors, shade is provided at some of these other centers, and it's more of a stretchy type of material to provide at least some type of shade. Is that a consideration?
I think that we have, and Karen again can comment on this, but I think we have certain areas that are next to the building that do have some of that, but I need help from Karen probably on this.
Yeah,
Karen,
there
you're gonna
should
have to
be
come on the
canopies
screen.
That are built. Oh, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Barely. You can turn your volume up just a tad, please.
All right, hold on. It's up pretty far. I'll put it all the way. There, you're
Okay.
at 100%.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, we provide, there should be canopies that are built into the facility that will give shade to each of the playground areas.
Okay, that's great.
And
That
that's
was,
a licensing requirement. So it is part of a California licensing requirement, so it will be built in.
okay, great. Could you talk a little bit about the operation flow of drop-off and pickup? I was looking at the 39 kids per 30-minute survey, and if you've got 2 lanes of traffic coming in, dropping off kids and picking up, is that a matter of, it's not a matter of parking and the parents going in and picking up their kids. The teachers are bringing the kids out for pickup, or how does that work?
Right now during COVID, they're dropping off at the front entrance, and then teachers are bringing them back into the rooms. A non-COVID day would be parents parking and bringing their kids into the building. We do provide like early and late care, so we kind of manage the rush hour and kind of ahead of time know morning and afternoon pickup, so we can manage the rush hour, if you will.
So speaking of managing the rush hour, so 39 kids in 30 minutes are being dropped off, let's say in the morning, or being picked up. And the survey suggests 7 parking spaces in the rush, 7:30 to 8:30 peak periods, and 4:30 to 5:30 being an afternoon rush. There's 11 parking spaces. I imagine some staff members go home early. In that scenario,
Correct.
how are 39 kids being dropped off or picked up with that few parking spaces?
I think they have like 7, don't they have 17 that are being set aside just for parents alone? Morning, afternoon, I think each drop off takes probably no more than a couple minutes. With the aids of parents and teachers helping bring kids in and out, there shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, I was going by the survey results.
Yes.
Commissioner Sicklin reminded me there were 17 for parents, so thank you.
Yep.
Any questions for?
I have a question regarding the Learning Experience Academy. Do they all look the same? So the one in Redlands and Riverside, would it be the same floor plan?
Very similar floor plan, yes.
Okay, similar. And then what, okay. And what's the time frame on getting the Learning Center open?
So at this point, I think we're hopefully looking at starting sometime. We are prepared to start, but it appears like probably sometime in February we'll start construction, if all goes well. And then it's a 6-month opening from there.
So fall 2021? Fall winter.
When I was walking at the businesses on the cul-de-sac today, they're all excited for that dirt lot to be filled up. So they welcome you to the neighborhood. They think it's going to be great exposure for their businesses, for those who have drive-by. So they're excited to welcome you. There is some concerns regarding the spillover into their centers. They're already dealing with parking issues. The arrangements they have with their lease is that they have to have so many customer spots. So most of those, that cul-de-sac is filled up with employees from those businesses on the east and the west side. So I was wondering if you could consider putting signs in those centers, both of those, that straddle the cul-de-sac as you drive up to your property. No daycare parking.
As you know, we have no authority to really place signage on someone else's property, but it is our expectation that The parents would be very much contained within the parking lot. I think, as we mentioned, we have 17 spots at any given time available. So again, we, as operators, we manage a lot of shopping centers as well. So I think we will certainly observe. We certainly want to be good neighbors. And if there is any issues, we're always in touch with our neighbors. And we have a very good relationship with the doctor who owns the medical building. And that's how we got the cooperation to put the sign there. So we will definitely very carefully observe whatever the conditions are. So you have our commitment on that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. The other questions they had were for asking about the drop-off policies, though. Thank you, Karen. They were going to tag in tonight and listen. What type of security cameras do you have at the center? Talking to the businesses, they were saying that they recently had a burglary. They've had vandalism over there, that type of transient type crime. So what is that being addressed?
Karen, I think we have a standard system that learning experience requires. So we have observation within the parking lot, correct?
We would have to, I think we do. I
Yeah.
can't confirm with that. I know inside we do. And depending on area, would be playground and
Right.
parking lot.
Right. So in all of our centers, we do have camera systems that would provide the remote monitoring by the operators. So we all the time see what is happening in our shopping centers. And also the local law enforcement has access to that too. We'll discuss that, but we definitely will have something for the parking lot as well.
Great, I just wanted to share some of their comments with you, but they certainly welcome you. And
No, we appreciate
They are
it.
excited for you guys to come on board.
Thank you.
I'm actually curious of the impact on COVID on the number of students or children that you're seeing in the other facilities. And then if so, has that changed your approach to this development timing in any way?
Yeah, we've been working on this for 2 years with staff and various stages. We never anticipated COVID whatsoever. I think Karen can kind of respond to the sort of capacity and so forth, but all of our projects are, fortunately for us, necessity-driven. We develop supermarkets and drugstores and drive-throughs and so forth. So the learning experience relationship for us kind of really fits well within that, because every community knows that there will be a growing need for early education and the type of professional supervision that the learning experience provides. So we're very excited about that. We're working with them on multiple locations.
I don't have anything further. Diana, do you have anything?
No, I think it's a really good concept and good aesthetics.
Thank you, sir. I'll go ahead and call it Mr. Morgan, please. And Raphael, in the meantime, on the staff report on page 5, it talks about the 10-day notice, public notice, and that in the Sentinel, and then on the website. So for both of these projects, I just wanted to, I know it's been a concern for us, we've talked about it in the past as far as the public notification and making sure there's enough public community awareness of these projects coming on. When I went on to the website, the city website, so, you go up there and you have I want to and about us, and then under government, and you scroll down to the public notices where our public notifications were. But on the planning, it has 87 items, but you can't fast forward. So it's an IT glitch of some, you can't go forward. You're only stuck on the first items on that first page. Just a little maybe tweak for note for IT. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Mr. Morgan.
That's all good. So I wanted to relay the concerns of my friend Veronica, who has a daycare that's right around the corner. She's hoping that this isn't approved until we have more kids, but that's just, just her own personal little joke. So I was curious about the signs. Was it the people in the other parking lots that asked about the no daycare parking signs?
It was the businesses along the, where the attorney office is, along there. And it wasn't their concern necessarily, but the other owners and tenants wanted to make sure that since they park in the cul-de-sac as employees and leave the parking for their customers, which gets crowded both on that side and on the dentist side, that the daycare would not be full in front and that they wouldn't be using their business parking.
So I was just curious about it. I mean, if they were amenable to it, then he wouldn't need authority to put the signs there if they wanted the signs.
They wanted the signs. They
Yes.
definitely wanted the signs.
I just want to clarify that. So I've had friends that work in that, that have businesses in there and have worked in that center, and it's the parking lot. The parking lot itself is very, very crowded most of the time, and then all the employees are on the street. So sometimes if I went there to meet somebody, I had to park on the street because the whole parking lot was full, and it's full now, and I could see that being an issue in the future. I had another question about in the mornings, if you're going to drop off, they were saying 30 students in 39 minutes or something like that. I mean, it's a significant amount that are going to be there within an hour or so. Going left onto Ontario in the morning is going to be an issue. You're going to have to cross, and we have 3 lanes of people. I live right there, and it's 3 lanes of people going towards Orange County. So the left turn has a potential to get pretty backed up there if a left turn is allowed there.
Because I think it's 3 cars in the queue on that left turn, isn't it?
No, I meant left turn from Vesper onto like a westbound Ontario in the morning. I would imagine a lot of them are going to be going that direction if you're dropping off your kid at daycare.
Meaning right turn only?
So, yeah, so the shopping center is a right turn only out of there. You're not allowed to turn left. I don't know that this is as intense as that, but it could potentially be an issue in the morning. Turning, you may get pretty backed up. You could easily have 10 or 15 cars backed up there with a significant number of them wanting to turn to the west. You can go back around the block. We do that all the time. You just come around and just go all the way back around. But
Back around eastbound.
But a left turn may be an issue. And I'm just saying because I'm around there a lot. The one last thing, I remember when the SPA came up on this, and so there was a lot of questions. There was questions from the commission, and I know I asked. It was a very specific amendment that was asked. We want to add daycare to this, and everybody said, "Well, why are we adding this one particular use to this specific plan?" And it was just like the answer was, "Well, we don't have an applicant at this time. We don't have." Why not just say? Why not just come out and say, "Well, we've had somebody interested in this." And they want to do this, and when we add this, then they'll apply. Why not just come out and say that? I don't understand. It was a significant amount of dancing around the maypole when it was clearly obvious that somebody wanted to build a daycare. It seems like a good use. I'm welcoming them to the neighborhood, but just come out and just say what's going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I did want to talk to the applicant on one thing, the field that currently, I think in the conditions of approval, it's to keep it graded. The weeds are getting large, and I wanted to ask one question about the fencing that right now, the drive-through in the middle, the driveway is just fenced in the field just to prevent driving onto the parcel. But at what point will the whole lot be fenced and the weeds need to be addressed? Only because we're still in fire season. Sorry, I forgot to ask why you were up.
Not a problem, not a problem. So right now, we're planning to start fencing the property in January. And we have, plans to start grubbing sites, so forth, but we can't really start grading until we have our permit.
The other folks, the other businesses were thinking that maybe that would help. The sooner the better for any transient population to go into the field.
Absolutely.
Just
no
FYI.
problem. Yep.
And as far as grading, it'll just wait till the project moves forward. If you can keep an eye on that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Fantastic, sure.
All right, with no more cards, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais. And commissioners, any final questions? I don't hear any. So, Ms. Sanchez, do we have any communications?
We do not.
All right, so I will accept a motion for Precise Plan 2020-0002.
I'd like to motion for approval, Precise Plan 2020-002.
All right, and do we have a second?
I second that motion.
All right, thank you. Please vote. All right, that passes 3-0. Thank you very much, Raphael. That was a good report. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Written communications in general. Have we received any, Ms. Sanchez?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Ms. Coletta, administrative? None. And do my colleagues have any reports or comments? Pardon? No. None, okay. Wishing everyone happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and the next meeting will be January 11th. Thank you.